Hi, good morning, everyone. So, this is part two of the cultural map. We covered this part. We are part of it. The culture. You are not able to see it because you are already part of it. So, the example was older fish to the younger one. Good morning, boys. How is the water? And young fish replies, "What the hell water is?" When you are in and of a culture, part of a culture, as fish are in and of water, it is often difficult to even impossible to see that what culture is. And often people who have spent their lives living in one culture see only regional and individual differences. Okay, let's understand it. There is one more case study, which is listening to the air. It is also known as, I think, ikagai in Japan. Let's understand. There is the scenario says there is an American author who is in India for a conference. She's asking she's inquiring for a good place to eat by the concierge. Let's understand this. To the receptionist, and the receptionist says there's a great restaurant just to the left of the hotel. I recommend it highly. It is called Swagat, and you can't just miss it. The author says perfect. And what she says, I walked out of the road and looked to the left. The street was active with lots of things going on. The street was a whirlwind of colors, smells, activities. I saw a grocery store, a cloth vendor. I saw everything but restaurant. Okay. The receptionist says when she is going back to the receptionist saying that she could not find that restaurant, which she can't miss it, and whose name is Swagat, receptionist says, "You did not find it? Just walked out of the hotel, cross the street, and the restaurant will be on your left. It is next to the market. There's a sign. You can't miss it." Again. Okay. Now the author says she tried exactly as she was instructed. She crossed the street immediately in front of the hotel, and again looking to the left, there was no sign of the restaurant. I turned to the left and walked a while. It was a little confusing as it was all jam-packed. Was this the market the concierge mentioned? I began to wonder, and I headed back to the hotel again. Irene, now what the author has done, she has requested the receptionist to help her find the restaurant. So now what receptionist plus the author, they are going together. And what author said, so they together we left the hotel, crossed the street, turned to the left, walked for nearly 10 minutes. 10 minutes walk is no less than at least, you know, few meters, few hundred meters, weaving our way through traffic on the bustling sidewalk and passing several side streets. At last, just beyond a large bank, perched quietly over a fruit store on the second floor of a yellow stucco building, I spotted a small sign which read Swagat. Receptionist, I'll take you there, scratching his head in bewilderment at Reen's inability to find the obvious. Okay, more detailed instructions. This time he explained, just walked out of the hotel, cross the street, and the restaurant will be on your left. It is next to the market. There's a sign, you cannot miss it. She could not find. Now the concierge smiled and said, I will take you there. They left the hotel, crossed the street, turned to the left, and then walked for nearly 10 minutes. At last, just beyond a large bank, she found a signboard Swagat on the second floor. So you understand, here it is not like that the author is not able to follow the instructions. Or not able to understand them. However, concern was the way instructions were shared. The way instructions were shared or given. There are types of communication in United States and other Anglo-Saxon cultures. People are trained to communicate as literally explicitly as possible. Explicit means yes or no, clear, or it also means low context. In United States and other Anglo-Saxon cultures, why do you think? Take a moment and reflect. Why do you think United States and other Anglo-Saxon cultures follow low context or as explicitly as possible? I'll give you 30 seconds. All right. The main reason why they follow low context or explicit communication because United States is a country which is comprising of different nationalities, people across the globe. Their internal culture within the United States is also diversified. So if they do not follow explicit communication, the message will never get delivered correctly because people from across the continents have traveled to this place to form United States. They have their own culture context. If you do not, if the communication is not explicit, if the communication is not low context, the communication will never be clear. Hence, they follow this kind of approach. Good communication is all about clarity and explicitness and accountability for accurate transmission of the message. It's placed formally or on the communicator. If you do not understand it, it's my fault. In Asian cultures, including India, China, Japan, and Indonesia, messages are often conveyed implicitly, requiring the listener to read between the lines. Good communication is subtle, layered, and may depend on copious subtext with responsibility for transmission of the message shared between the one sending the message and the one receiving the message. The same applies to many African cultures, including those found in Kenya and Zimbabwe, and to a lesser degree, Latin American cultures such as Mexico, Brazil, and Argentina, and Latin European cultures such as Spain, Italy, and Portugal, including France. They follow what kind of culture, which is I M P L I C I T, implicit communication, which also means high context. What does it mean? That I will not be extremely clear with my intentions. I will hardly be using yes or no kind of communication in my sentences, hardly. Why? Because the culture is so intact that they understand each other's implicit communication very well. They are living together from so many years, ages, decades, centuries, that understand the non they understand the body language, they understand the uh, sentences, what does it mean, and they are so good at sending and receiving the messages and reading between the lines. Hence, they follow implicit communication, which is high context. I hope this is clear. I'll erase it and I'll go move forward. Okay, an observation from Japanese. In Japan, we implicitly learn as we are growing up to communicate between the lines and to listen between the lines when others are speaking. Reading between the lines is very much part of their culture. Okay, communicating messages without saying them directly, communicating messages without saying them directly, the deep part of our culture. So deep that we do it without even realizing it. To give an example, every year in Japan there is a vote for the most popular new word. A few years ago, the word of the year was KY. It stands for Kuki Yumenai, which means one who cannot read the air. In other words, a person sorely lacking the ability to read between the lines. In Japan, if you cannot read the air, you are not a good listener. Kyuki Yumenai. I think I mentioned here Ikagai, not Ikagai. It was not Ikagai. It was Kuki Yumenai. K Y. Kuki. Someone who cannot read the air. Who cannot read the here. Low context communication. Say what you mean and mean what you say is low context. Say what you mean. I will you be coming to office tomorrow, though being an holiday, because we have a client coming in. The example which I shared in my last video. No, I will not be able to. It's an important day for me. I have someone's special birthday, so I have to attend that. That is low context. Say what you mean and mean what you say. Tell them what you are going to tell them. Tell them what you are going to tell them without it changing any phrase or sentences. Then tell them, then tell them, then tell them what you have told them. In supercritical environment, managers go a step further. They ask the subordinate to repeat the messages and then get confirmed if the message has been delivered correctly, which is also known as paraphrasing. This kind of messages conveying confirming back from the subordinate is done in armed forces, so that there is no gap between understanding. Because when you are on a mission, when you are on a uh, you know when you're in mid of a mission, you have to follow an explicit communication, so that, or low context one, so that there is no gap of misunderstanding. So they follow this approach: say what they mean and mean what they say. Then tell them what you are going to tell them, which are thoughts, the thoughts that you have. Tell them very clearly. Then tell them, and then tell them what you have told them, which is repetition. Repeat your sentences. And then in a supercritical environment, you ask them what you have understood. You ask them what they have understood. So they will repeat your message. And then you can get to know whether what you have conveyed them was accurate and what they have understood is accurate as well. This is done in supercritical environment. If you see there, I remember one cricket match. They were in the finals, and there were few balls left and few runs, and the one who was on the striking end, the batsman said, "I was not aware. No one told me that we need 5 runs in 3 balls. I would have easily managed it. Till the last moment, I was not aware how many runs do I need. I thought that we have a complete over left." So this kind of communication in a supercritical environment has to be followed in this way. Say what you mean and mean what you say. Tell them what you are going to tell them, then tell them, and then tell them what you have told them, which is a repetition. If it is in a supercritical environment, tell them to repeat what they have understood, so that there is no ambiguity in terms of understanding. Okay, paraphrasing what I have understood from you is, all right, let's do one more case study. Mariam is from Iran, and you are also from a high context culture. Let's say you are also coming from a country like China, Japan, or India. Mariam traveled to your place and arrived late evening at 10 p.m. If you ask Mariam and if you would like to eat something before going to bed, Mariam responds with a polite no, thank you. In particularly in high context cultures, it's being told by parents whenever someone is offering you something, first you have to say no, thank you, and you have to wait until they request you again to have it. I was also, raised this way. Mm, My mother used to tell me at first, at least two times, you have to say no. If they are still insisting and offering you for the third time, then you have to say yes. That is our culture. Okay. Here, only when she responds three times with a no, thank you will accept no as her real answer. In high context culture, this is the, you know, modus operandi we follow. We keep asking, थोड़ा सा ले लीजिए, एक बार ले लीजिए, टेस्ट कर लीजिए, अच्छा रहेगा, थोड़ा सा टेस्ट कर लीजिए. This is the way we treat our guest. And if they said no, even for the third time, then we consider no as the real answer. Coming from a high context society, you know that no well mannered person will accept the food the first time it is offered, no matter how hungry she may be. If Mariam replied to your first offer of food as yes, 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 please serve me a big portion of whatever you have because I'm dying out of hunger. This response would be considered inelegant and perhaps quite rude in uh, high context culture. So, coming from low context culture, you both know that no thank you likely means please ask me again because I'm famished. Okay. This response would be considered inelegant and perhaps quite rude. Coming from low context, no, it should be high context. Discard. Coming from high context culture, you both know that no thank you likely means please ask me again because I'm famished. Please ask me again because I'm famished. Alright, let's move forward. Case study. We understood this, and now let's go to understand high context. What is high context? They are relationship based societies. Relationship based societies where networks of connections are passed from generations to generations, generating more shared context among community members. Example, Japan is island society with a homogeneous population and thousands of years of shared history. Low context is United States, a country where with a mere 100 years of shared history has been shaped by enormous inflow of immigrants from various countries around the world. all with different histories, different languages, and different backgrounds. Because they had little shared context, Americans learned quickly that if they wanted to pass a message, they had to make it as explicit and clear as possible with a little room for ambiguity and misunderstandings. And that's the reason why United States follow a low context communication way, while countries like Japan they follow high context way of communication. Okay, let's understand one more case study. A businessman who communicates between the lines frequently would be considered a good or bad communicator. When asked from a Dutch professional who notices that his country is low context positioning on the scale. You asked a businessman who communicates between the lines frequently would be considered a good or a bad communicator when asked from a Dutch professional who notices that his country's low context positioning is on the scale. His country's own positioning is on the scale is towards the low context side. What he says in Netherlands, if you do not say it straight, we do not think that you are trustworthy. If you do not say it straight, we do not think that you are trustworthy. However, if you are coming from a high context culture, if you do say it straight, it is considered as inhuman and uh, you are not empathetic. If you are from a low context culture, you may perceive a high context communicator as secretive, lacking transparency, or unable to communicate effectively. Lew Edmondson, American Vice President Sales Kraft, said, I have always believed that people say what they mean and mean what they say, and if they don't, well, they are lying. On the other hand, if you are from a high context culture, you might perceive a low context communicator as inappropriately stating the obvious. You did not have to say it. Well, we all understand. Will you be able to come tomorrow? Well, tomorrow is an important day. It's my daughter's birthday. If you say only this in a high context culture, he is able to understand, the other guy is able to understand that you will not be able to come because it's an important day for you, which is your daughter's birthday. And if in a high context culture you further go ahead and say, yes, tomorrow is an important day, it is my daughter's birthday, so I will not be able to come. In that case, what they will say, well, you do not have to say it. We all understood that it's an important day, it's your daughter's birthday. That's how you need to play and understand the cultural nuances. Or even as condescending and patronizing, you talk to us like we are children. If you said that it's an important day for you and it's your daughter's birthday, we understand. You need not to say that you will not be able to come because we are not kids. We understand. You may be considered a top flight communicator in your home culture. So let's say if you are coming from US, you may be a top flight communicator in your culture that works out best for you, but you will fail. You'll fail if you do not understand the cultural nuances of the country where you are moving in. So this needs to be understood. All right, so let's move ahead. I hope this point is clear. In the UK, as in US, if you send someone an email and that person does not have the answer at their fingertips, both common sense and etiquette call for the receiver to respond within 24 hours saying something like, I got your message and will get back to you on Wednesday. An American manager, this is another case study. An American manager sent an email to their Spanish supplier, who she knew does high quality and on time work and has a very good level of English as well. And in this scenario, she does not hear back from him or any of his colleagues for 3 or 4 days. Now she says, the American manager, I'm biting my nails. I'm biting my nails, assuming all sorts of problems with my request that prevent a speedy reply. Either that or the entire staff has fallen ill or the building has burned down so that no one can read their emails. And then 3 days later, I received an email telling me that they have done exactly as requested and everything is under control. But they did not acknowledge, no acknowledgement of the receiving of the email. Rather, kept they kept doing the work, and after completing of the work only they confirmed that they have done exactly as requested and everything is under control. Why could not they have said that in the first place? Where do you have the greatest likelihood of misunderstanding? The greatest likelihood of misunderstanding can happen when a low context person communicating with someone from the low context culture. Okay, I'll take a moment. Where do you think the major sources of misunderstanding in communication will happen? Your options are low context, communicating with high context. Second option is low context with low context. And third is high context with high context. Take a moment to reflect and help me understand where is the major source of miscommunication is likely to happen. I'm giving you just a sec. Okay, so let's think through this. Where do you have greatest chances of misunderstanding? Low context to low context, low to high, or high to. I'm giving you a few minutes to respond. I'm giving you 40 seconds. Just reflect back. All right. So let's understand. The right answer is one low context person communicating with someone from another low context culture. For example, a Dutchman communicating with a Canadian. A high context person communicating with a low context person. For example, a Spaniard communicating with a Dutchman. Third is one high context person communicating with someone from another high context culture. For example, a person from China communicating with a Brazilian. What do you think the greatest chances of misunderstanding would be? Where you will find? Normally, people think that it is here where a high context person is communicating with a low context person. For example, a Spaniard communicating with a Dutchman. However, that is not the right answer. That is not the right answer because at least one of them is low context, would be speaking in yes or no. The biggest chances, major chances of misunderstanding and communication may happen here, which is high context, which is high context to high context. This one, high context person to high context. Why? Because his high context is driven by his culture, and this guy's high context culture is driven by. So they both are high context in a way, but this high context is coming from Japan. They have their own rules of culture, and this high context culture is coming from, let's say, India. They have their own way of high text high text culture. Similarly, China over here, or here maybe you know Japan. So Japan and China, they both are high context, but their way of high contexting is different from each other because that is driven by their own culture. The correct answer is C, as I just explained. On a multicultural team, most misunderstanding takes place between people who come from two high context cultures with entirely different roots, such as Brazilians communicating with the Chinese. Strategies for working with people from higher context cultures: to listen what is meant instead of what is said. This means reflecting more, asking more clarifying questions, and trying to be more receptive to body language cues. Can you complete this project by next week? It will be very difficult, but I will do my best. Strategies for working with people from high context cultures: to listen what is meant instead of what is said. This means reflecting more, asking more clarifying questions, and trying to be more receptive to body language and cues. Can you complete this project by next week? It will be very difficult, but I will do my best. We will think about it. Or it will be hard for these reasons, but let me consider it. Strategies for working with people from lower context cultures: be as transparent, clear, and specific as possible. Explain exactly why are you calling. Assert your opinions transparently. Show all your cards upfront or send an email repeating these points straightforwards. State clearly what you do not understand and ask for clarification. Do not read between the lines. And better not to be polite, as it gives the impression of vagueness or uncertainty. I'll repeat that again. These are extremely important when strategies for working with people from lower context cultures. Be as transparent as possible. In high context culture, what do you see? It's been observed that you do not say it directly because you are coming from high context culture. Why? Because saying no is impolite. Will you be able to come tomorrow? I understand it's an important day and I understand that it's a weekend, but for a few hours, say yes or no directly. If you do not keep it direct, they may think that you are lying. Be as transparent, clear, and specific. Extremely important. And that's a reason why, I've seen guys, and it's about myself as well. When I'm working with, now I understood these things very well, but initial years of my career when I was moving to different countries and I was working with people from different cultures, I was not saying no to a lot of things because in my culture it is impolite. But then they kept on, I was having so much on my plate that I could eat. Because I have not said no to them, my plate got so overwhelmed that I hardly could eat anything. I'm not talking about food, I'm talking about the job responsibilities. So be as transparent, as clear and specific as possible. Explain exactly why are you calling. Assert your opinions transparently. Show all your cards upfront. Send an email repeating these points straightforwards so that the low context team member knows what has to be delivered. State clearly what you do not understand and ask for clarification. If you do not understand, please ask. In high context culture, you do not ask a number of times, that too from a senior guy. You park it for later. You park it for later discussions. Later discussions. Do not read between the lines. Do not read between the lines. Only understand what is being said explicitly. You read between the lines, nodding of head as yes, half nodding of head as yes. because you're coming from a culture where this is taken as nodding of head is taken as yes, half nodding, while the other guy is coming from a culture where nodding of head, half nodding is taken as well, I understood what you mean, but I am in disagreement, or I understand what you mean, and I will give you a befitted reply at my own place and my own time. Half nodding also means in some other cultures, well, I understood both what you said or what you're trying to say. Half nodding also means, well, I can very well read between the lines. I understood. You understand? So do not read between the lines. Ask, are you in agreement with this? If you are unsure, half nodding means yes or no. Ask, does it mean that you are in agreement with what we are discussing? If not, please say so that I can find a workaround. Better not to be polite. It gives the impression of vagueness or uncertainty. I will come back to you on this later. I'll tell you. I will keep you posted. Uh, I do not understand it well, but maybe we can discuss it later. Well, I'm parking this for later. These kind of sentences brings vagueness. Avoid them at all. I hope this is clear. We have. I'm not going to extend the video more than an hour because it becomes too overwhelming to go through. I'll keep it for an hour, and the rest topic of the book I will cover it in a subsequent video. I hope that should be fine. What should you do if you have members from more than one high context culture in your team? Lay out the issue and have the team develop their own solutions. Don't wait until problem arise. The best moment to develop the processes is when the team is forming before miscommunication takes place. The best moment to develop the processes is when the team is forming before miscommunication takes place. Do not wait until problem arise. Okay, now comes three levels of verification at the end of any meeting, particularly if your team is coming from a different cultural environment. One person would recap the key points orally and with the task rotating from one team to another. Second is each person would summarize orally what he would do next. And third is one person would send out a written recap. Written recap is important, again on a rotating basis. So first is one person would recap the key points orally, and this week, let's say you have 5 team members. So first week, no, first person is doing, second week second person, third week third person, like that. Then each person would summarize orally what he would do next, summarizing it orally what they would do next. And last, one person would send out a written recap Written recap is important so that they know what they have to do to avoid any ambiguities or confusions. When you should put things in writing, the more low context culture, the more people tend to put everything in writing. The more low context culture is, the more people tend to put everything in writing. That was a fine meeting. I'll send out a written recap. Thanks for the phone call. I will send you an email listing the next steps. You are hired. Here is your written job description and a formal offer letter. This explains why, compared with European and Asian companies, Americans' business tend to have more documents. Tend to have more documents like organizational charts, titles, written objectives, explaining who is responsible for accomplishing what, performance appraisals, stating in writing how each person is doing. One more case study, let's do it. The scenario is Bethari Syamsuddin, an Indonesian manager working for the multinational automotive supplier, reports to a German boss. Bethari Syamsuddin is reporting to a German boss. His boss wants more clarity on the decisions made during the meeting and requested for the written communication. This team is based out of Indonesia, and they are going to work with a German person. Okay, German boss, Bithari, could you please make the communication more transparent? More transparent. I often do not know what decisions have been made, and I want a high level of clarity. Going forward, could you please send a written recap of our weekly Bangkok meeting to me and all the participants to boost the clarity? Let's see the repercussions. Bethari, when I first sent out this written recap, putting all of them in copy, the team members, my good friend and colleague called 2 minutes after the recap was sent out and said, do not you trust me, Bethari? I told you I would do it in meeting. You know I'm good on my words. She thought I was being political, that I'm keeping everything in writing now, which is what we often say about the Europeans. We think that Europeans are political in nature. With respect to Indonesia's, with respect to, this is not my opinion, this is the opinion of this Indonesian manager whose name is Bethari Samsudin. And why do they think so? Because they keep everything documented. Bethari, in my culture, if we have strong relationship and come to spoken agreement, that is enough. Spoken agreement is enough. So if you get off the phone and send me an email recapping in writing everything we have just decided, that would be a clear sign to me that you don't trust me. As the next meeting, Bethari explained carefully to the team why she was putting everything in writing and asked for their indulgence. As I explained, that this was very natural way to work in Germany, and they were fine. If I ever need my staff to behave in a non-Indonesian way, I now start by explaining the cultural difference. As a manager, that's as a project manager, as a senior level executive, you need to understand these cultural nuances. And if you are proposing anything which is quite different from the natural cultural context, always start by explaining the cultural difference. If I do not, the negative reactions fly. If you work with a team that has both low context and high context members, putting things in writing reduces confusion, saves time for multicultural teams, but make sure to explain upfront why you are doing it. All right, so I'll stop the video now. I'll cover the next topics in our next uh, discussion. I hope you have enjoyed it, and if there is any feedback, please keep me posted. Thank you. Shabba khair.